Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to assemble and install the DIY Packraft 4-point thigh strap system for whitewater paddling. Let's start by assembling the straps themselves. If you're not making them from a kit and you want to cut your own shapes, I'll post this diagram on the DIY Packraft website. There are two pieces in the kit that look like this, minus the pen marks. Lay one out on your parchment paper and then cut some scraps of single-sided fabric like this. Slide one beneath the end of the double-sided piece with the TPU side facing up like this. Then place the straps into the slots like this. Be sure to use the strap lengths that are indicated on this diagram and double check to make sure they're in the right spots. Then sandwich the parts under a second scrap of single-sided fabric, like this, and begin sealing everything together, checking to make sure that things don't move around before they're welded in place. Seal the two straps to the other end in the same way. Then trim off the overhanging scrap fabric. Assemble the second strap in the same way. Assemble the attachment points by lining up the slots and ironing the single-sided fabric to the double-sided reinforcing circles. Now let's install the attachment points. The exact placement for the rear attachment points isn't critical, but they should be roughly beside your hips when you're sitting in your paddling position. I'm using a backband in this Packraft, and I placed mine about 13 centimeters or 5 inches forward of the rear tube-to-tube seam. I'll make a separate video showing how to make and install the backband, so look out for that. If you plan to install a spray deck in the future, you'll want to be sure that these attachment points don't extend sideways past the tops of the tubes. So place a yardstick or a similar straight edge across the tubes and use a non-permanent marker to mark the tops, or you can just eyeball it. Place the edge of your attachment point at or just inboard of the top of the tube, and then center one of the small single-sided fabric circles beneath it, like this. You may find it easier to mark the spot with a pen, and you may want to use masking tape to hold things in place while you figure out where they should go. Iron this circle to the tube fabric. In case you're wondering, the purpose of this circle is just to provide some extra abrasion resistance where the G-clip would rub against the tube fabric when it's clipped into the attachment point, like this. Next, place the attachment point over top of the circle, orienting it so the two slots are angled towards the opposite tube number 2, as shown here with the straight edge. The exact angle isn't critical, but it should be approximately like this. When it's oriented correctly, seal around the edges until the attachment point is fully welded, but don't try to weld the central part down to the fabric circle below. We need that area to be left unsealed so we can slide the clip through the slots. When that's done, do the same thing on the other side tube, mirroring the position and the angle of the slots so they're angled slightly across the cockpit towards the opposite tube number 2. Now that the rear attachment points are finished, let's install the forward attachment points down by your feet. You'll probably want these to be as low as possible and as far forward as possible, so hold one of the attachment points there and mark its center spot on the tube. You might find this easier to do with the Packraft deflated. This Packraft doesn't have an airtight zipper, so I'm doing all the ironing with it lightly inflated. This area is awkward to work on, but it's not too bad. Center one of the single-sided circles over the spot you marked, and then iron it in place. To figure out the correct angle for this attachment point, insert one of the G-clips into the attachment point and pull it back and up towards the rear attachment point. If necessary, rotate the attachment point until the G-clip is oriented correctly, and then, without moving the attachment point, either tape it in place or tack it with your iron. Then remove the G-clip and weld the attachment point to the tube. Repeat this procedure on the other side of the pack raft. For this second one, I stood the pack raft up on its side, and that made it easier to iron. Now that the front and rear attachment points have been installed, the best way to figure out where to locate the other attachment points is to install the thigh straps and sit in the pack raft to see where the G-clips naturally end up when the straps are adjusted to fit comfortably around your knees. When you're installing the straps, remember that the narrower end faces forward. Move the straps forward or backward until they're centered around your knees, and then use a pen to mark the location and angle where the G-clips touch the tubes, keeping in mind that if you plan to install a spray deck, you won't want the attachment points to extend out past the tops of the tubes. And ideally, the straps should pull straight out from the tubes at 90 degrees, not at a shallower angle. Also, try to place them symmetrically so that both sides of the pack raft look the same. Use the G-clip as a straight edge to draw a line so you can orient the attachment point correctly. Then draw a line across one of the small fabric circles and align it over top of the line you drew on the tube. Seal it in place and then use that line to orient the attachment point over top of the circle. Remember that the line is the natural orientation of the G-clip, so the slots in the attachment point should be perpendicular to it, not parallel. If you make your lines a bit shorter than I did, then they won't show through the slots like this one does. Add the final 3 attachment points in the same way, orienting the slots in the attachment points perpendicular to the lines you drew. Now you can attach the thigh straps to the pack raft and adjust them to fit around your legs. The straps don't need to be tight, especially lengthwise, because the rolling power will come from the points around your knees. Tighten them just enough to take out the slack. If any of the straps are excessively long for you in your pack raft, you can trim them to a more reasonable length. If you cut the strap ends at a 45-degree angle, they'll be easier to thread through the G-clips. Before you venture out into whitewater with your new thigh straps, remember to practice your wet exits in a safe environment with someone who can help you if things go wrong. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.